Hello, and thank you for being with us today. In life, we hear many times about failing in business, maybe succeeding in business, and many of you have asked about some of the challenges that I've gone through personally and I guess professionally. So today I'm going to talk about some of the businesses that you failed at or that I failed at and kind of why. I think that at the end of the day, there's two things that I want you guys to take away. Everything happens for a reason, so just let it go. It's not that big of a deal. And number two is really understanding why something didn't work. If you have something that doesn't work and you don't analyze that and figure out why it didn't work, you're actually failing that. It's one thing to find out why you were successful in something and then taking an inventory of that. But if you don't dive deep into why you didn't win, then you are actually failing in that case, I believe. So don't fail and not learn from it. And so today I'm going to talk about the things that I've done that I've had some sort of ownership in and how those went. So today we're going to talk about how everything I touch, see I just failed there, try again, it works. Everything that I touch turns to gold, which maybe visually is what people think, or they're rotten tomatoes. And if you've ever looked at a rotten tomato, they're terrible. This is a small list of the things that I could remember over the last 4 to 5 years that I failed at. The good thing is, and I can't remember who told me this, but they said, well, if you failed and no one knew about it, that's good because no one knew about it. So it didn't really matter. So I've broken them up into 3 different categories: meetups, investments, and then ideas. And we'll go into a couple of them and really dissect what worked and what didn't. And feel free to ask questions throughout. So as you can see here, a couple of meetup ideas. Drop Anchor, we'll go into detail with that. A coffee meetup before our coffee meetup here. A marketing lunch, tech and eggs, great meetup challenge. And then some investments. So those of you who don't know, we had 3 rounds of investments. We invested in 13 companies. And then ideas, a lot of ideas didn't work. But we can go over most of those if you want as well after. But I ranked these based on 2 factors. Basically the time that I had to spend on each one, and then emotional attachment. And so financially could be, on both of these, but I didn't think that financing was the biggest thing. I thought emotionally and the time that I spent working on something was far more important. All right, so this isn't Hatch in general. This is Hatch 2 Investments. This was an investment that we made in 5 companies. And so this was around the time of, we launched it January of 2013, but from, let's say, September to January, we were trying to find companies to invest in, and a ton of time went into this. I ended up making 0 money on this, and unfortunately for the couple of investors that we had, we lost, I think, $47,000 on this. It is something that emotionally we closed this year, and although something's going to happen, when you actually do it, it was tough. I was always terrified of what the investors were going to say. I was always terrified of just like what I felt as a person. And I remember this. I came in. I wouldn't say I held off on closing it for a while, but for so long, I wouldn't just close it. I was like, well, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. And remember, we're investing in companies, so we don't really have a day-to-day short-term business model. You're basically relying on other people making you money, kind of like the stock market, where you just hope that you made a good bet. And so it's probably 3 months ago, and we had finally come to the conclusion that the 6 of us were going to close the shop, that it was financially the best decision. And I remember I wrote a handwritten letter to each of them, and wrote them a check for a little bit of money that they each got. And I just started crying, and it was really hard because it just was like, wow, this thing that was you thought going to work didn't, and you spent a lot of time on it, but you learned from it. And so some of the things that we learned from it, this is just this specific class, Hatch 1 and Hatch 3, I think will give us different results. We do not have them on this. But the reasons why I think maybe it failed when I dissected it a little bit more, company commitment. So I believe that the companies that we invested in didn't actually push it the way that we wanted them to. One or two of them actually quit while in the 3 months that we were in here. And so that was kind of a pain, to give them $15,000 and then for them to basically be like, this isn't for me. I remember one of them went to an event, got feedback that he didn't like, and basically was like, I'm done. Not fun. I was really cocky at the time. I felt, and this is hard for me to admit, right? I felt like it didn't matter. We had a ton of momentum, and everything I touched was going to work, and then it didn't. Other things helped with this, but I was too cocky about this, and you learn a lot when you start to lose things. Money, they didn't need money; they needed to work. Of those 4 companies, one of them actually did return the money back to us, but they went on and started a company called Mass Roots, who many of you guys know is publicly traded now. It's a marijuana social network, and it's worth $50 to $100 million. So we don't have a stake in that, even though it was built basically around the same time as there. So had we had the 8% in that, we're losing $4 to $8 million. Is it, if my math is right? That sucks, right? It sucks a lot. Especially because it was the same people doing the same thing. And I think what we learned in that case is it's hard to get people to sign certain deals, but if you could, as crazy as this seems, bet on someone for a long time, no matter how many different ideas they have, knowing that you've developed them in a better way, that you have some sort of tie to that would have been a better result for us. I remember a time where we thought about trying to get a stake in their company, but because of the type of company it was, collectively, if I recall, people weren't really interested in being associated with that because some of the investors were businesses, not necessarily individuals. Those businesses didn't really want to have a marijuana social network associated to them. So losing that kind of money really, really, it can hurt. Still friends with those guys. They're doing great things, but to not have a piece of that, knowing that it was basically built a month after they left you, not fun. And then milestones. I think with any company, you should create milestones. From an investment standpoint, definitely milestones. So say I'm going to give you, we're going to collectively give you $10,000, and every time you hit these predetermined milestones, we'll give you a portion of that money. That way, that if someone quits early, like we learned, we didn't give them all of it. We only gave them a portion of that. And what I've learned is that actually is a pretty common thing now. It might not have been a few years ago, but really putting milestones against people. We understand that pivots happen, but not allowing someone to get money all up front and doing nothing with it. Any questions about this while we're still on it? So a lot of lessons learned. We haven't written a check, so we did do another class after this. We do have some interesting stories there, but I think we will. We learned a lot from investing, and I don't know that I'll ever invest again for these reasons. Right? It's really hard to bet on someone else when you know that you can't control them the same way that you can. So it's all about controlling ourselves.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, and this is in relation to the class and the awards for the first start, right? Or the second start movement? Or?
Is this so?
So you said you gave them money, right?
Yep.
And it didn't work out.
Yep.
Do you think the amount of money had anything to do with it?
So the difference between Start Norfolk is it really was a challenge and they won X, Y, and Z. We learned from that we were giving too much money. right? So our second place winner basically never started ever. The one that I might have met you at, Start Norfolk 2, that group, we gave them, I think, $15,000 to $25,000, and they never launched. So I think that amount was important, but I also think that's, if you really look at why did this work and why did you get hundreds of people, because people are excited about winning $25,000.
Sure.
Right? So there's a give and take there. You have to say, well, am I willing to lose this money, or am I really trying to grow a business? And so I think that's where you learn, this might not be the best idea to get that money. From the Hatch standpoint, if you won Start Norfolk, you didn't automatically get into Hatch. You had to still apply. Yes, many of them did, but that wasn't a prerequisite or anything like that. The amount of money we actually increased over time. So we ended up writing $10,000 to $30,000 checks. When we dissect and survey and talk to our companies, the most important thing is what ultimately has turned into 1,004. Right? They said the money wasn't that important. The money, or the relationships and content, the resources were far more important than a check. So that's another reason why we stopped writing checks. Is how can you find people that are really willing to bust their tails? It's just they might need a little guidance. Make sense?
Yeah. Sure.
Does that answer what you want?
I was just curious if you thought the amount had anything to do with
So in some cases, I think we could give them millions of dollars and they still would die. So I wrote a book in 2013, probably started in 2012. I don't know why I wrote a book. It was a thing that people were talking about doing, and it took me probably 18 months. I learned a tremendous amount. It allowed me to really understand our community in a different way. It really allowed me to dissect and understand what I had done. But from a financial standpoint, and probably from a notoriety standpoint, zero. Right? I think, and we still make maybe, I don't know, $2 to $5 a month on Amazon royalties, which is fine. Collectively that can be, maybe a couple $100. But ultimately, it just was a bad idea for the amount of time that you put into it. Emotionally, nothing really tied to it. I gave it 5 just because I'm indifferent. But 10, 18 months, and I don't think I really put a lot of. You can still get it too. It's actually free on our website right now. You can download it, or we get $3 from Amazon. But if I was to really look at it, I wrote for a very small market and didn't even really market to those people, and they didn't really care. I talked to all those people. I became friends with these people, but they weren't really interested in buying something like this. I built a product, or I wrote a book that was built to be sold like a product that had a huge market, and it didn't. Now maybe some say that it was a lot of word vomit, and I got 80% of the way, and the other 20% is what I really need to focus on. I probably could have done better if we worked with economic developments, kind of with some of the stuff we're doing now. But ultimately, I went after so you hear people say, oh, I built this for myself. I built it for myself, and then I never found the user. I never found the customer. And that's okay, but ultimately it was just a challenge. I am a terrible writer, and I knew this going into it. I'm a terrible writer now. I should have never written the book, or I should have paid someone to ghostwrite it. And really, I only sold it for 1 month. So while it's always been up there forever, I really only pushed a sale for 1 month. And that's where I made 90% of the money.
So do you think had you pushed it for more, you would have made more money?
I think had I done more of the things that we preach every day, it probably could have made more money. But I have to look at that return and say, is this worth it? Right? And so, am I going to spend the same amount of time now building it to only make another $3,000? That probably doesn't make sense. So I think in book sales, if you make $1,000, you did well. So for me to have made $3,000, apparently that's really good. So most books do tank. It's an ebook. It's formatted okay. I could probably spend $1,000 and get it a little bit better out there, but is it worth it? Or could we write a different book and do something, a little bit better.
Using the knowledge and stuff that you have now.
We do, but I also think I don't love this, right? I love the concept of speaking about it, but I don't love writing. But I spent a 10 out of 10 on this, 18 months. I mean, I would wake up at 2 or 3 every morning and just try and write. And write. And write. And I mean, I reread it for the first time last summer, and I was like, all right, you know, like, it's not terrible. It's a good, it tells a lot of factual information. But it's not, it just, you know how people say, oh, you're tied to your idea, you can't see the outside world or whatever? I mean, that's what I was. I was naive, stupid, and I should have known that I wasn't going to do it. I don't think we talk about this, but then after this, I thought about writing another book. I don't know why. I was going to call it the $5 marketing book. I went on Fiverr and got a free cover, or a $5 cover, and said, hey, Facebook fans, I'm thinking about writing another book. It's going to be around what you can do for $5 with the marketing. If you're interested, pre-order now and get it. I sold one pre-order. Guess what I didn't do? Write the book. Right? It probably could have done better, but no one seemed to care, and I didn't want to put a lot of effort into it, so realized I didn't write that book. We collectively as a Hatch team have talked about writing a book on more like dissecting of really good brands, but we tested out by writing a blog post, and that blog post doesn't necessarily get a huge effect out of it. So if it pushed back and got some amazing things, maybe we would write that. This one probably hurt the most. So in the same time frame of Hatch 2, try putting on a national conference. We had 10 or 11, 12 speakers coming in. I looked at this yesterday while putting together these slides, and it was actually pretty impressive of some of the people that were going to be here, but we did a tremendously terrible job of marketing this. We also did it 1 month before, or 1 month after our Start Norfolk event, and thought that those attendees were the same as this conference's attendee, and they were two totally different things. So we're marketing something at probably 6 or 7 times the cost, not on a weekend, 2-day event, to someone who we think our customer is, but isn't. So time involvement, 8. Emotional, 8. One of the worst things about this is, remember talking to my accountant later that year, or the next year, I guess, and him reminding me of how much money we lost on this conference. Now, I guess you write off whatever, you still lose it. A couple of things, big things that I learned. Never pay a speaker a tremendous amount of money if you don't have to. We canceled the conference 3 weeks before. And one of the speakers, we signed a contract. I think we gave her $5,000. She never came. We still gave her the money, because that's what the contract says. Also, a non-equity member was the one who signed it. So I let someone sign a deal because they were a partner, but they weren't necessarily an equity partner. And because of that, I had to pay $5,000. So when we canceled it, I like this person. I'm not trying to say anything bad about them. They go on vacation, and I then get this email from the talent agency, and they say, you owe us $2,500 or $3,000. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I knew we had paid before. I didn't realize that those things were in place. And so that really sucks. Thank God we hadn't ordered food yet. But we set such terrible concepts of how much we needed. We needed to sell like 600 tickets to really make an impact. We sold 30. Remember, when you sell tickets and you cancel an event and money is tight, 30 times 300, that's what, $9,000? So then we lost another $9,000 in there, but it marketed all this money on there. Is that right? 30 times 300? Understanding fees. So everyone that talks about polls and surveys, you really have to understand what people are saying in this case. The only reason this thing happened, the only reason we tried doing this event is because feedback from surveys said, we want a speaker conference. So when we give it to them, we didn't understand what they really wanted. Funny thing, a lot of those people who said this is what we want didn't even buy the damn ticket. So a survey can be great if you really understand what it's saying. If you're incentivizing someone to fill out a survey, it's BS material. Oh, win this iPad if you fill out the survey. They want the iPad. They're not giving you real information. And so all too often, people are giving you information that could be extremely valuable if done correctly, but if it's not, you lose. And so this, financially, was a big loss.
So it's bias on the incentive, and then it's also confirmation bias on the way you ask the question.
Exactly.
So that sucks. But
It does. Especially, like, if we were to do this again, what would we do? Start small, 30 people, 45 people, 60 people. Build a brand around it. See if it's what people really want. I think our tagline, I don't think we have it on there, it was something like, it's for the startup community. No one cares about the startup community. They care about their business. Right? So no one's sitting there going, how is this going to help my business? How is the startup community going to affect my business? Yet it was one of the things that we talk about, entrepreneurship and startup community building. People didn't care about that. Yet that was something that we sold. Pricing, way too expensive. I think it was 200 early bird, 300 there, 2-day event. People don't have that kind of budgets here to do a lot of this during the week for 2 days. Too many unknowns. It's really tied to the surveys. But also, just we never did it before. And so to try and do something that big first time was a challenge. Still probably don't know who the buyer is. Marketing, just terrible marketing. Momentum, that's a big one. Believing your momentum is going to carry you. We had a lot of momentum at that point. We had just finished our third start Norfolk, 450 people went to it. Remember though, they weren't our customer. So we had to build a completely new buyer persona, a completely new customer, a complete new market. Yes, some of them will overlap, but it didn't work. And there's too many moving parts. Maybe if we had a company like Executive Events, they would have helped us realize that we were idiots. And then dates. Thursday, Friday was just not the right thing. Maybe a one day on a Friday, but trying to get people to take off in a town that doesn't have that ability to do that was a challenge. What I would have done differently in that is go to companies and say, take your team. So instead of selling basically B2C, sell B2B and say, hey company, we got this event coming on. We think it's going to be great from a team building perspective. Tickets are normally $300. We're going to give them to you for $100 if you buy 50. Something like that. Basically just to get people there and sell that over and over and over again. That's how if we were to do this again, not going to do it again. That's what I would have done differently. Questions on this one? So remember, the first thing I ever said was, it all works out, right? Like, you get to be able to be here and talk about it. It sucks when it's happening. It really does. And there's plenty of times when I sat there and said, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm not going to go work somewhere. But I don't know what I'm going to do. You just have to push through and find ways to make things happen. Because at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason. Many of you know that Eric and I worked on an idea called The Pitch. Basically, it was a digital version of a pitch event where people can get real-time feedback from current business owners on their ideas. We actually made $125 on this. I think we validated the idea. I don't think we knew the business model. And what I mean by that is we had customers. We probably had 1,000 signups. And then if someone wanted to pitch an idea, they had to pay $5 to use it. I believe if we would have made that free and sold to a place that was getting a lot of pitches, some sort of amount, $2,500 per an event, $500 an event, that would have done better than trying to basically be a B2C. And so had we figured that out earlier and sold to like a startup weekend or a Dominion hackathon or anything like that, I think we would have found more customers, but we didn't understand it at the time, and we were excited that we had 24 paying customers, 25 paying customers, but that probably should have been free, and we probably should have sold the platform to places that could use it. Follow through? Didn't follow through. We actually had a couple of investors show interest and say, is this something that you want to raise money for? And you think about that and you go, it's interesting. But for some reason, even though this is totally my space, I didn't love it. And I don't know why, but I didn't. And at the end of the day, the follow through and the love hit there. It's something where if you don't love something, you're not going to commit to it. You're not going to keep doing it. And Eric had just started 80/20, and it was the first real thing that he and I had worked on together. And we spent probably 2 or 3 weeks getting it up. And if you were at Start Norfolk 4 then, I think, you saw that it broke in the middle of it. So we're trying to use it. We tested it. We used it as the polling system at the event, but we were, I don't know why, but just stupid and didn't realize that we could sell it to be the platform for other places. And I think it would have worked in that case. We kept it up for a while. Every once in a while we would get someone would say something. One day we had 4,000 hits to the website. That was pretty cool. If we would have sold it differently, I think it probably could have done better.
Maybe you should revisit it.
We could.
Like you said, change the model, but
it's just about love.
A neat idea. But
Yeah. The domain was $450. I think we actually let the domain go. But it was interesting. Look, a lot of people talk about failure as something that happens to everyone. I think it's a little too negative of a word, but I think people understand what failure is, and that's why they talk about it. Failure is really just a learning experience. It's really, think of it as a baby, right? If you got to walk, or to walk, you got to crawl. Before you crawl, you got to do something else. And if you look at your business like that, it's a series of those steps. You're not really failing as a baby to do that. You're learning. You're trying by doing. And that's really what I think this concept is. But I think where people really lose is when they don't really understand where they are. And I'm a pretty firm believer that most businesses should never fail if they're truly validated, they truly know who their customer is, and they're making money. There's obviously challenges around that, but I think the most people that fail are, and if you work still, right, you have to work hard. The most people that I think struggle are ones that didn't do one of those 3 or 4 things. If you truly don't have your company validated and you're trying to make it bigger, but you don't know kind of who your customer is or who's willing to pay for it, you can't grow from that because you don't know who you're going after yet. Those are all little learning experiences in there. And so when we talk about markets or the buyer personas or on the business model canvas, who you're talking to, all those things are really important. But if you can't figure out who one of those customers could be and what they're willing to pay for it, you haven't figured out your business kind of as a whole yet. And sometimes it just takes going to different places, talking to different people to figure out what exactly they want. So data, understanding what data is really telling you. If any of you guys watch Silicon Valley? So have you watched this week's episode? So spoiler alert, they have acquired 500,000 users for this company on Silicon Valley called Pied Piper. So downloads seem important, but they only have daily active users of like 19,000 users. So understanding that one piece of data says you're doing really, really good, and one piece of data is saying that you are not doing well at all. So don't be stupid and look at the wrong piece of data and think that everything's fine. If your company is making $1, but you're spending $1.20 to get there, your business probably isn't doing well, right? You're losing 20 cents every time. So don't look at the just top line revenue and say everything's great when it's costing you way too much money to even make that dollar back. And I think that's where a lot of people also struggle is they say, this is what my revenue is. Well, your revenue means nothing if you can't afford to keep that in place. And so again, if you're spending $1,000, if you're making $1,000, but it's costing you $10,000 to acquire that $1,000, is it worth it? But that's the number that people use because it's the sexy term. Don't look at the sexy term. Also, don't follow all the trends. The trend is there because someone is trying to sell it. And most of these people have never done it themselves. Does no really mean no, right? You heard me talk to Damon about this. Does no really mean no, right? Or did you not ask that question right? Or could you have pushed back a little bit more to get a more of the result that you want? Also, can no lead you to the right direction to get the better answer that you're looking for? Maybe you ask one question like we were talking about with the survey, and that leads you to a different question and a problem statement. And you can answer that and you can build that. That could be a win, but if you don't look at it that way, you could lose. And although lots of money's been lost in this, the money was never the reason why any of these things didn't work. Money meant zero to any of these things. Yeah, we lost it. Yeah, we could have made a lot more, but the end result was never money. Dropbaker didn't work because we didn't have money. We spent probably $50,000, $60,000 on it to get it out. We made money on it. We couldn't execute. We didn't do the upfront things that were necessary. The pitch took us time. It cost us a domain, and that's it, right? The book, same thing. Basically no money. And so when you look at all these things that we call failures, money wasn't the reason why. It was we didn't get back down to brass tacks and really trying to understand and deliver as to what people were looking for. A couple other things that we can go back to and look at. I mean, it's just a commitment. How many of you guys know any of these things that we've talked about? Most of them you probably don't. Why do you know Hatch? Because it's consistent and we've been doing it for a long time, right? Had we been doing any of these things for a longer period of time, they probably would have worked too. But being consistent is so important. People quit way too early. There's a story in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I've read about 45 pages of it, but the story is early on in it. It's about a guy who's mining, right? He's 3 feet away from the gold, and he quits. Some other guy buys the land, pays someone smarter, and says, how close are we to the gold? And then he makes, and then he hires someone to get there and says, this is where it is. Don't quit because you think it's not working. Sometimes if you could spend, maybe hire a coach or someone to look at something for $100 to say, actually, have you thought of this? That could save your entire business. Had that guy taken that idea and hired an expert for like 1 minute and said, you're this freaking close to here, all you have to do is this, wouldn't that be worth it? And so people are quitting too early because they don't like getting their hands dirty. How close are you to that gold mine? Oftentimes, I think we're a heck of a lot closer to that gold mine than we think. And if we just were to take a different set of eyes every once in a while to say, what do you think about this? That's our thing, right? All of these 4 failures, all 30 failures, whatever it is, they're all directly related into asking other people what they want. Business is about fulfilling the needs of other people, nothing else. If you build only for yourself, you might only win for yourself. There was a gentleman here this morning who was like, well, I never thought of it that way. I said, well, why would someone give you money for something that you want? It's what they want. If you want a drink, you're going to go to a place that gives you a drink, right? If you need a new piece of software, you're going to go to a place that can help you fulfill that. It's all about finding the places and people that need what you want and giving it to them. Questions? So, while from a visual standpoint, from a world perspective, everything that you see me touch might be good, it's really not the case. I just think that sometimes when we're consistent, things look a heck of a lot better. But all of these things I've been trying to do while also doing hatch, or have some sort of capacity of doing what you see as hatch today. And I believe that it's made me better. It's made me stronger. You know, we had a media company called Silicon Anchor, where we went around and tried doing basically what Hampton Roads Business Weekly is. But guess what? We weren't the right fit for that. But then I got the opportunity to be the host of something that I want to do, and that works a heck of a lot better, right? We couldn't find a way to sell what we wanted as a dream to people to buy it. But when you can be the voice of that or the face of that, you jump on board with that because you tried it. We knew how to create the content. We didn't know how to sell it. And I think that's where that missed too.
Did any of those failures spawn successes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So all right, let's go through line by line. Drop Anchor has turned into Execute. Right? Start Open Coffee is now Coffee Downtown. Marketing Lunch, I have no idea what that is. Tech and Eggs, no, but someone else took it and has been doing things with that. Great Meetup Challenge, no. That was when we were trying to sell a product around selling an event and how to do that. So of the investments, I can say Reality Bridges probably turned into Makerspace. Podium Pro, you may remember, has turned into 30 Seconds Out. Shout out. RoboScent turned into Mass Roots. Hatch 2 led to Hatch 3. So Silicon Anchor was acquired by Hatch, or at least all the assets, and then basically I would say that piece of it turned into the TV show. The pitch, how about a great relationship with Eric? That's worth something maybe. Steak and Eggs was us trying to create a course for real estate agents. Sounded like a good idea. 30 days later, the content's great, but we had no idea what we were doing, and we just tried doing it's stupid mistakes. So Carrie Norfolk's on here because many of you that were here earlier, there's a lot of freaking challenges in trying to be in that kind of field. So Carrie Norfolk is an on-demand delivery service, but you're trying to tap into other businesses, and so the POS system's on there, the geo-tracking of trying to find out where specific riders are, it's really expensive. Riders are really tough. And emotionally, that one was really high. And Ian, who started the company, will tell you that one was really, he got shingles, it was so stressful. Ultimately sold that to one of his writers and is building out the software logistics piece of it called Carrie Logistics. So that's there. Carrie Norfolk has now respawned and is doing something similar. We tried doing a crowdfunding case on the Great Paper Airplane Race. I think we made $37, but with Kickstarter, obviously you don't win anything. $5 book. Fit Founders, a podcast. It got me to run, so that might be worth it. I don't know. We applied for 2 grants from the SBA, lost them both. Just a waste of time is what we learned from that. I started a blog called Startup Nerd. For some reason, I felt that I needed to have separate entities that would do similar things to Hatch. So instead of just having Hatch and a blog, I decided to keep Hatch and then let's have a blog that is Startup Nerd. It made no sense. It all should have just been on Hatch. And ultimately what happens is you have all these websites that you have to build individually. You waste all this time on it when they all end up being on Hatch anyway. And so at one point, I have Hatch's website, Startup Nerd's website, The Pitch's website, SiliconAnchorNews.com, right? They all, and so we're branding these things individually when all they really need to be is Hatch. And so for whatever reason, I felt that we needed to have multiple angles going at it when all we needed was one. And it was a lot of waste of time doing that. Yeah.
So at what point do you decide to throw in the towel on an idea?
Well, It's a great question.
Is it emotional or is it financial?
Well, I think financial is probably the first thing, right? So if you're spending too much time on something and it's not making money, that's going to hit emotionally, probably. I think it really depends on, like, is this your life, right? Have you taken an idea and it's kind of a side project, and if it turns into it, then that'll be this great thing. I think that you have a longer runway. But if it's your life, I mean, you got to make decisions quick, right? So if you were to build a brick and mortar store and it's not making money, and you look at that runway and you say, I got 2 weeks, 2 months maybe, and if I don't figure it out, I got to do that. But also, I think that once you start putting that number in your mind, it's over. So if you put let me say that again. If you put a date as to when your business is going to be over, or when you have to look at it, it's already over. It's like this quote I say, if you're questioning whether you gave it your all, you didn't give it your all because you're questioning it, right? If you have given your business a date as to when you have to look at to see, are we going to close or not, throw in the towel that day. It's similar to what you say when you wake up and you don't love it anymore. That's the day that you should give up, right? And so,
Good job, said Ray.
did he? Oh, I don't know. But it's all about that. If you're not giving it your all, and then you put a date associated, it says in 3 months, if this isn't working, we're going to be done with it. Then you're giving yourself excuses as to why you should get out. So maybe that's it, right? As soon as you start giving yourself excuses, close it, or no, don't do it anymore. Some of them are easier exits than other. Like if we have partners in some of these things, it can be difficult dealing with that. A lot of these things were 100% owned by me. Some of them were owned by many people. And obviously the ones that are 100% owned by me are a lot easier to get rid of than ones that aren't. I think when you look at something and realize how much money you lose on it, you go, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. Like people are like, oh, I love that Drop Anchor conference idea. You should do that again. I'm probably not interested in losing $60,000 again. If that's the number. I mean, it's probably even more. There is nothing worse than having to cancel something emotionally on this. Right? I remember waking up. It was my birthday. It was 2013. And I went to dinner with Megan, my fiance, and we went to Chow. Super excited because it was a brand new restaurant. And we go. And in the middle of it, I realized that, oh shit, this thing is 3 weeks away, and we've sold 30 tickets, and we need to sell at least 300, but really 600. What the hell are we going to do? So I wake up at 4 in the morning, I think, and I write an email to some people that were helping us out, and I said, literally, I believe the subject line was, what the fuck am I going to do? And then we got together, and we met right in this room, and they said, well, you should call some businesses. Here are some issues that we see. This is probably why it's not going well. And had we had that meeting beforehand, we would have been able to go through those challenges before. But again, between being cocky and momentum, thought we could get through it. And when you call someone or you email them and say, hey, we're not doing this anymore, everyone is pretty much okay with it. But having to then pay for some things too and take money out of an account that you don't have and send it back to people. Remember, $9,000 plus the other $2,500 that we had to get back. So we've already made a decision that we can't do this. And we have no money and we can't fulfill it. Then we have to spend $11,500 to just break even. And we don't have that money anyway. So what do? You just find more credit card space, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember what we did. But it sucked. But you move on. And you keep pushing. And that's it. Anyone else? Life goes on. Don't quit. If you're putting a date to your company's end, you should throw in the towel though. Thank you. Namaste.